Welcome, everyone, back to the Multi-Location Marketing Show. I am Elliot Olson, joined here with Matt Nickols. And again this week, 2 weeks in a row, we've got Kevin Mullett, our VP of Program Services, responsible for many things at MarketSnare, a couple of which are social media and business listings. So this week, we're going to talk about business listings, and thought I'd let you, Matt, kind of just give an overview of what we're going to cover and kind of the idea behind this episode.
Sure. Well, business listings, there's, I think, a lot of misinformation about business listings out there and what they are and what they do and what they mean. And so when we talk about business listings, we're really talking about information. There are so many websites out there that have information about any business, your business, right? And whether or not you give it to them or not, there's registries of information from when you incorporate a business to when you sign up for anything. That data just gets out there and people start passing it around and buying it and selling it. And so there are lots of listings out there that say something about your business. That could be from the Better Business Bureau to business data sites, to Yellow Page sites, to review sites, things like Yelp and TripAdvisor, obviously Google My Business, which is really important. And all of those things have information about your business, right? So as consumers are looking for you and things like these things might come up in different contexts, whether they go to a specific site like Yelp and they're looking, for businesses of a certain type, or the Yellow Pages, there are going to be listings there and you want your business listing to be accurate, right? And those, most of those sites don't do a lot of traffic, but in totality, there is stuff. And some of the bigger ones, obviously, Google My Business is like huge. And that's super critical. And then, in different parts of the country, Yelp is really big. And so, depending on what industry you're in, if you're in the entertainment industry or hospitality, like TripAdvisor, you got to be there, right? And there are other ones like for healthcare, and there are ones for HVAC, and there are ones for movers. So, every industry has, individual niche directories that are really important. And when you have, the other really critical factor with business listings is that, Google, they index everything out there on the web. So not only do they see your website and your business, and they can pull your address and things from that and what you've told them on your Google My Business listing, but they're indexing all these other sites, and they're like comparing that and saying, hey, if your information is accurate and consistent across 100, 200 different websites out there that have business listing data, that is a credibility booster. They can say, hey, this is consistent, and this, I have more trust in this business because all these things are the same. This business looks active. They've got things out there. They're obviously doing a good job of managing their information. And so, that can really help build authority for you and trust with Google, and help, it's one factor that can drive you up the search rankings. I think one of the latest things I saw from Moz, which is a local data provider, they do a lot of research and things. They said in their equation, they thought listings equated for about 10% of your authority. Now, obviously, that's just a number. They've kind of an educated guess because no one knows Google's algorithm and it's always changing, but based on their experience and the data. And I would say, anecdotally, like when we've done business listings for people, when they were using maybe another service that had just a limited number of business listings that it was managing, like a Yext or something, and we've taken them off of that and then started doing manual listing claims and working with the data aggregators and seeing their citations go from, 50, 60 up to north of 200. We've seen direct correlation with rise in rankings, more terms in the number one pole position. So there is definitely a correlation there between authority and ranking. And, that's always changing. Some people in the industry think it's going down. Some people don't think so. You'll get a different answer with any SEO person you talk to. But the reality is we know it does make a big difference in lots of ways. And so from when we business listings can be very difficult because there's all different kinds of ways. Like, how do I get them claimed? How do I make updates to this wrong information? When you're thinking about one business, when there's literally hundreds of listing sites out there, obviously some are more valuable than others, but because sites that have higher authority and they're listing you on there, they get more credit. But any citation still can be really good. And a citation, the technical definition would be anywhere your business name, address, phone number are listed on the site, whether there's a link or not. If there is a link, that is even more valuable. But citations and having those consistent, is really a trust signal that's out there and becomes really important. So doing that for one business is a big effort. Now imagine if you have 50, 100 local markets, now you times, exponentially increases, right? And so the art of business listing management is, how do we do that? How do we get the accurate information for each of your locations or local representatives of your brand, pull that together, and then go out and check all these sites, update them, claim those listings, and make sure the data is consistent and up to date because of all the reasons that I've said. So that's kind of the general premise of the business listing area of local marketing, why it's important. And we're just going to talk about that today. And Kevin and his team, they manage thousands and thousands of business listings every day. And they've got a lot of insight as to, how to approach that. And obviously, especially for multi-location businesses, which is why we're here talking about this today. So that's my intro.
Yep. Kevin, question for you. I've been wondering this myself, and how you would answer this. I'm curious. How many business listing sites are there to manage, and how do we tell which ones are the most important, listing sites? What are the most important ones to start claiming first, if you will?
So the reality of this is they're going to something that Matt said is truth be told, there's really an endless amount that are available where you can have citations. Whether they're referred to as business listing properties or whether it's just a citation is to some degree irrelevant, okay? Mm-hmm. What we are looking for is how do we improve Google's trust that you are a business and that this is your location that you do business from, or that this is the service area that you do that you cover. At its core, it doesn't matter how many sites there are. That's what you're attempting to do. Now, to make this as a simple analogy is, how many websites can you have a backlink to your website from? I mean, how many websites are on the internet, right? You could have a backlink coming from all of those websites. Is that what you need to do well? No, absolutely not. Is it helpful if you could manage to pull that off? Well, probably, if Google didn't think that you were doing it in a nefarious way. So what we are looking for is we are looking to take and try and unify the data across as many of the locations as we can. Now, I want to dispel just a tiny misnomer. It used to be that Google used to get really hung up on whether you used RD and then sometimes you'd use ROAD, right? Sometimes you'd use ST and sometimes you'd say STREET. That is largely gone away. Okay, we cannot see statistical difference in that. But what we can absolutely see is that if the address is literally wrong and the phone number is literally wrong and the URL points to 12 different, root pages or whatever, you're going to have a bad time. That's just not going to work well. So our goal is to take, and to answer your question more specifically, we have 15 to 20 that we absolutely, these are the first ones we go after. We care about them the most. That's got to happen. And then you have what are referred to as the aggregators. A lot of people argue about this. We have seen evidence that when we get that data correct in the aggregators, in the main places, that's getting back to something Matt says quite often is the 80-20 rule. I wouldn't say that's 80%, but that's a large part, is getting that base thing correct across all of your locations. Now the question is parity. Parity with your competition, right? So is there too many citations that you could have? I don't think so, as long as they're at good places,
sure.
Right? So what we want to do is show activity. We want to keep showing Google activity. And so I don't think that quantity is the game. Quality is the game across as much quantity as you can do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And you kind of alluded to this next question I have for you a little bit, but how do you improve? Google My Business is arguably the most important one of these, to be on. How do you could you just give us some quick, suggestions on how to improve, your ranking for GMB? Well, so the reason that we're talking about this is, and Matt again alluded to this, is yes, some people used to go to Foursquare, example, right? And you would check Foursquare for what your friends had been to and so forth, and you would get traffic. Well, that meant that you had to have a correct listing on Foursquare. Some people still do go to Yelp, right? Is it everybody? No, clearly not. But some people will still go to Yelp. They'll look at reviews. They'll look at things. And so that means you have to be correct on Yelp. Getting into specifics, if you're traveling, you're probably going to go to TripAdvisor, right? Is your data correct there? And are you managing that? And is it done well? But at the end of the day, all of those are a product, and GMB is a product of getting in there and getting the data set correctly. Mm-hmm. Now, correctly also means, so a big tip here is, you have to have the right categories. If you're a service area business, then you need to have the correct markets that you serve. You need to let Google know where that is. And the reason is because if you're not going to Yelp and then directly going to the business, and you don't go to GMB and you don't go directly to the business, then you're doing this so that you show up in what's referred to as the local pack, the 3-pack of organic results. And we'll get to this in a second too, but I'll let you know that it's not just the map pack that doing business listings affects. But anyway, so if they're not going to GMB and they're not going to Yelp and they're not going to TripAdvisor, then you want to show up in that map pack. And to be able to show up in that map pack, you have to increase that confidence that Google says that you are a business, you are relevant to this market, you're relevant to the query of ice cream near me, or lawnmowers near me, or HVAC repair near me. And to do that, you have to make sure the data is correct, the categories are correct, the information is current, that, like if you've not touched it, it's a big problem. If you haven't touched it for months or years, then somebody may have made edits and you're not even aware of that. So it's, I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but there's all of these things that GMB it becomes the central thing for. But one of the big things is that we're trying to get not just the map pack to be right, not just if they go there and search on a map, we want it to help with the organic results.
And I would add to that that, improving your ranking in GMB, is much like doing SEO. The algorithm's slightly different. There is some overlap. Obviously, as you build authority in your local website, that can help. Reviews play a role, the quality and quantity. But the local pack that Kevin's talking about is very keyed in on proximity a lot more than others. Now, that doesn't mean that always the closest businesses are going to show up, because that's one factor, but it's a heavily weighted one. So, you may get bypassed over by somebody that has more authority with Google that's further away, but you have a much better chance. They're not going to show, if you do a search for HVAC repair in Dallas, they're not going to show you something from San Antonio. They're going to show you something that's local. So that's the other part, that Google really understands intent of keywords, and they've done a lot of work in this area, and that's one of the areas they've really grown in over the years. So they have a really good idea, if you search for HVAC repair, that you have a local intent and you're looking for someone that offers that service. And that's what triggers that map pack. Certain other searches, like if you said, how do I replace my furnace filter, they're going to quantify that as an informational search, and it's not going to trigger a map pack. So depending on the search terms that are being used, they're using different things. So as Kevin was saying, if you offer a wide range of services, you've got to do a good job both on your website and in your GMB listing and other listings that say, I do all these services. Because if you don't have them on there, then you're not going to be triggered in that map pack, right? And so the other thing that's, there's only 3 listings in the map pack. So getting that real estate is so valuable. I mean, we see tons of leads being driven by that, because it's the first thing that Google shows front and center. And not many people, I think, click through to see the full map. It's like, hey, here's 3 options. They look at the reviews, where they're at, and boom, they can click on that. Now, that doesn't mean no one does, but like if you're in one of those pole positions, that's extremely valuable to a business. And we've seen it have tremendous impact, obviously, in your traditional organic results as well, in the search results, underneath the map pack. So all those things kind of work together, but it has become really important. And you've got to think through the strategy of, proximity, keywords, location, and all the other things we've been talking about in building authority. And that's going to really help improve your rankings there.
And I want to help people understand why doing something that impacts the map pack and the doing business listings helps organic. And when we say organic, like literally the example that Matt used, where it's an informational query, well, why would this over here have anything to do with an informational query? Well, one explanation that is a part of this is something that is referred to within search engine optimization, which is Google's EAT. It's not an algorithm, but their EAT. I can't even think of a word for it right now, but essentially it stands for expertise, authority, and trust. Now, would having a great GMB prove that you're an expert in that? Probably not, right? But the reviews that are in there would, right? Authority. Are you an authority for that object or for that area? Again, does having the GMB by itself prove that? No. But the reviews within it and the citations that come in from all of these different sites certainly could say, if you have a lot of citations coming in and so forth, that improves your authority on that subject matter, that task. But trust. If your address is 10 different ways across hundreds of different sites over the years, and it's been left that way, what does Google trust? Does Google trust that you provide that service in that area? Well, the trust is going to go down. So it's important from an organic standpoint to understand that Google's algorithms looks at these various signals. Signals is the word that I was looking for, and that is certainly one of them that this whole thing helps to improve.
Our local and niche sites, like industry sites, are they important, like as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like we said before, Google's gotten really smart. So if they see, an HVAC site, they're going to give more weight to that in the HVAC space potentially. Obviously, that site's all about HVAC and HVAC providers, and then if they're linking over to you from your profile, that's a huge win. And obviously, those sites are trying to drive consumer interest who are looking for HVAC providers, right? So they obviously exist to pull those people in. So if you're there and you're listed, you get another shot at being found. However, they're driving traffic, maybe through paid or organic traffic that they're getting or other means. So those become really important, I think, and then the local sites in your local community, again, they help you build local relevance. So if that site is all about business or whatever in the Dallas market, then they're passing authority over to you from a listing on your site. Again, it ties that together. To what degree, it's hard to know. But when you have more local sites, Google connects the dots on those things.
Sure.
They certainly can. And that can help you build that local relevance. And that's one of the things. There are a lot of these national business listing management solutions that are out there. And, they're fine. I mean, they do their job. They're going to get you the top 50, 60 national kind of listing sites. But one of the things that they do not do well, at least the majority of them that I've seen, they don't take any account for these niche industry directories and local. And so that's why we always recommend to do, a more holistic approach to business listings, because, those getting those local listings in each market help you build that local authority and help you with your local organic visibility, your GMB, the whole 9 yards, as do industry-specific directories. They become really important to a lot of the businesses we work with. And so having a strategy that can bring those in to your overall game plan, becomes really important.
Quickly, I just want to ask, what are the differences between citations and backlinks? Are they the same thing? I know this can kind of be confusing for a lot of people.
Well, so it's actually pretty simple. A citation has to have at least the business name. I mean, like, think of citing something, right? So the very root of that is you have to have the name. And from an SEO standpoint, we're really talking about name, address, and phone number. That's referred to as the NAP, right?
Right.
But you can have a citation plus URL, right? And so that's just a more complete a link. That's just a more complete citation. You could have a citation that includes hours of operation or directions. That's just a more complete citation. A backlink is literally just a link to your website or a page within your website.
Gotcha.
So some citations are just citations. Some citations contain backlinks, right? So obviously if you have a citation with a backlink, that's better than not getting one. But you still get credit for your business being cited. Again, Google's indexing everything. So if you're mentioned in an article somewhere and they say, Acme Widgets on 123 East Main Street, if you want to give them a call at this number, within the context of an article, that's a citation for your business. Now, another listing, if they had a link then, visit their website here, then you've got a citation and a backlink. So, not all citations are backlinks, but that's kind of the difference. So,
cool, yeah. And then, Kevin, I'm curious to hear your answer on this, because Matt and I talked about this, and Matt's shared a little. So I think I know the answer to this to some degree, but I think, I don't know, I'm just curious what you'll say about this. Is business listing management, is it a one and done thing?
Oh, absolutely not. No, not the least of reasons why it's not is because in some particular industries, more than others, it's cutthroat. I mean, you'll have competitors go out there and change your information. Most people are probably not aware that anybody can go in and suggest edits to a map. into a listing on changing it on the map will, in essence, change it in the GMB, right? And so there are some.
Do you remember that? We had somebody go and change our business address from normal to, and if we
in
were
the middle of a cornfield,
in the middle of a cornfield somewhere. So,
but there's also the fact that, and I'll try to be really brief on this, is you got to consider that there's all of these sources, right? And this is why, more than any reason why we're very passionate about how we do business listings, is because a lot of the services that are out there change only the stuff that they have partnerships with. Now think about that for a second. They're only changing the stuff that they have a partnership with. That's a problem, right? Because that means that things that could be looked at by Google as authoritative are not getting changed simply because they don't have a partnership with them. Now, what does that do? That means that Google and a lot of other services, when they're coming through and they're looking, well, wait a minute, we found this address over here, but that's different than what you have over here. And so now sometimes this will revert to a wrong address simply because the time that the service looked at this data source is after they looked at this data source, and they get confused. So aside from nefarious reasons of competitors, aside from the fact that data changes, the other thing is kind of like social media, and just a little bit of a way, is you want to be touching those sources every once in a while just to make the services themselves see that the data has changed and that this is the freshest data.
Right on. Anything else you guys want to add having to do with business listings?
Just to that last point you were making, there's, like Kevin said, there's just so many data sources out there, and people are just, there's literally millions of businesses. So they're pulling in data every which way to try to get accurate data. I've heard of companies that scan yellow pages and OCR the stuff in, and then they'll put that data out there. Then some other directory will go, hey, this is a brand new update, and they pull it in. Well, it could be a year-old thing where your address, we've gone in and changed people's addresses, and then they get reverted back. And you're like, we didn't authorize that. We didn't do anything. What's going on? And that's just, the explanation you get. Well, we use this data source and it was newer, and even though it was wrong, like they have no idea to know that it's wrong. So the universe of the web is constantly changing. New directories are coming on. Other ones are going out. Things are getting updated and changed. Even if you've changed it, we've had to go round and round, even with like Yelp, to get a listing locked down, and they keep changing it. And so you're following all the procedures and everything they're doing, but things still change, right? So that's one aspect of it, why it has to be managed. The second you stop managing it, it's decaying and it's getting worse and worse. And it's just a matter of how much time, right, before it's like really hurting you. So yeah, you might be fine to do it, and then like, hey, a year later, guarantee you it's going to be a percentage off of where you started. There's no doubt. The other thing I think that Kevin alluded to earlier that's really important is that there is there's something to be said about like constant activity, updating those directories that, hey, this is the most recent, I'm checking in, but also adding new citations on a regular basis that's continuing to grow your activity and showing that you're growing and that you're moving up and right. And that's what you want. So you want to have a solution that's constantly building more and more authority and growing your citations, over time. And then obviously there's situations where you have addresses change and you've got to go in and update that, or your hours of operation or your phone number.
Right.
So all those things, it's in a constant state of flux. So if you can, some people do that, like, hey, I'm going to update these once, but especially for multi-location businesses where you have lots and lots of locations, means more and more change, more and more things going wrong potentially. You need to be able to actively manage that and have human eyes looking at that, getting the data, pulling it in, comparing it to what the actual data needs to be, and then taking action on your behalf. And if you do that, you're going to have tremendous success.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, Kevin, for being on here today with us. And if you're a multi-location marketer and you want to know more about business listings, you have any questions about, how do I manage business listings at scale? We'll have our contact information in the show notes. But appreciate all of you tuning in to another episode of the Multi-Location Marketing Show. And we will see you all next week.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.